on. I'll do a little bit of quick intro. My name is Donald Robertson. I'm going to be doing Math 99. Our class is asynchronous, which is a very weird word for you don't need to turn up for class, you do it basically on your own. That is difficult, and I'm going to be here as much as you need me for, or as little if you don't need me at all, but I will be available. And so you are totally free to turn up and ask questions. I'm going to keep this slot open because I have an office hour at 7, but that might not work for you because you probably want to sleep in. So if you want to come and ask me a homework question, you can just drop in during this time slot. And I'll try and help you, but you have to do it at the beginning because I'll be making videos instead. So you'll just go and watch the videos of this lesson. So typically, if none of those times work, please email me and say, look, I got a job. I can't see you to 5 o'clock or whatever, and we'll figure something else out. Also, you can email me, and as long as it's a reasonably easy question, I can answer your question by email. Right? If it's some long, convoluted maths thing, it might be a bit harder, but most of the time I should be able to do it by email as well. So I don't want you to feel like you're left hanging out there on your own. I'm totally happy to help you as often or as little as you want, and hopefully the videos that you get to see will give you a good foundation to do the work. So, I've already introduced who I am. Let me tell you what I don't have. I do not have an accent, Madison. Ryan? No. Joe? Don't have an accent. At least from my perspective. When I talk to people back home from Scotland, if you're interested, like my family, my sister and so on, they don't have an accent when I visit Scotland. When the COVID Gestapo let me, I have a great time, and I don't hear accents. So if you're all wondering how that can be, well, from my perspective, it's true. I don't have an accent. You lot actually have the accent. You lot have an American accent, most of you. So just to get you in the right frame of mind. Most people, after a couple of days, don't even notice. It's just a funny way I talk. That's all it becomes. So you shouldn't have any real issues. That's what my experience has told me. There are a couple of idiosyncrasies, so let's get them out of the way. It is J, not J, and it's Z, not Z. And it was my alphabet before it was yours, so I am right and you are wrong. Right? But all to do with perspective. Some of my students have told me that they just pretend that there's 2 more letters of the alphabet. After Z, there's another one called Z, something like that. And that seems to work for them. Some of you will find that when you're doing your homework, you will hear a little Scottish voice. I've been told that by a lot of students. And I've also been told that it's nothing to worry about because once you don't get me, it disappears, right? So it's not like for the rest of your math life, you're going to hear a Scottish voice when you want to do math, right? It's not that bad. A little bit about me. Obviously, I'm from Scotland, born and bred there. I started teaching in August of 1980. That's when they started paying them. So I'm pretty close to doing 42 years of this job. Still haven't a clue what I'm doing, but I keep trying. So that's a little bit about me. Let's start with what we're going to do. We are going to do the syllabus. Not all of it, because it's there to see. You can read it yourself. Talk about what's on Canvas, Canvas resources. Going to spend a fair chunk of time on WebAssign, because WebAssign is where all your homework is, where all your online tests, where all your finals are. In other words, you can't take this class unless you do WebAssign. Now, if you haven't signed up for WebAssign, I'll show you later. how to do so, the information that you need. You get the first week free, so you don't need to like fork out any money, but you will eventually at the end of that week have to pay. And I know that's an added expense. Sorry about that, but it's kind of hard to do this class unless you've got something online like this, right? So we have to do something. The fact you've got a week free, at least if this class doesn't work for you, right? If it's just too much work, you know, you've got a job, a wife, family, and all the other things that do, you know, maybe make it impractical for you. At least if you drop it inside the week, you won't have paid any money, right? Because it's free for the first week. So that's something. And I hope that's not going to happen to too many of you or any of you, but just in case. And once we've done all that, we'll actually get to start chapter 2. And we're going to do some math, which I like. So I'm now going to nip over to our first one, which is the syllabus. And you should be looking at Math 99. Is that what you're all saying? That's what you would have seen when you turn up to this class, right? And it's got that fella, right? And right now it's got that fella. The college one just has all the usual resources that you can get from the college, and you can look at that in your own time. In our case, the major one right now is this one here. And the top one, if I click on it, slightly out of order, but that's fine. And I do that, and I make it a little bit bigger. This tells you all the fun stuff that you need. So what do you need? You need technology. You need to be able to see. You need a computer. It's really helpful if you've got video, as you do, and a mic. If you don't have them, or one of the machines you've got dies on you, you can actually get a loaner from the college. So there's information about how to do that. Now you want to join as soon as you can WebAssign, and these pages here take you through it. The key number is that code there. That's the code for this class. So when you use that code, you join our unique Math 99 class, right? No one else has that code, just you lot, right? And that's where it'll be. And then the next few pages basically take you through all the different steps to join, right? And then we kick on to this one. I have a office hour at 7, which I mentioned, and this is the link. We have a Canvas page with lots of good stuff, which we'll talk about. That's basically that one done. And so that's probably the first place that you'll look, because that's where you'll get how to join WebAssign and the link that you would use to do Officer. If you want to contact me just normally, you know, outside Officer, the link that you use to get here is going to be that link. So if I say, okay, I can see you at 3, use this link here, right? And I'll be waiting for you at 3. Now, there are other things. There's some information about me, tells you a fair amount about what, you know, what Scotland is like. Here, if I click on it, this is where you are going to get our lectures. So if I click on this one, you will see that it's blank. Later this evening, so it's basically, you know, 7, 8 o'clock, because it takes me a while to process the information. I'm giving an example. Do you see the conversations we had at the start of today about what's your major and it's nice to see you? That doesn't appear in these videos, right? Nobody needs to know that. It's none of their business, right? So I have to edit the video and then I have to upload it. And anyway, it takes a fair amount of time. So, but it will be there by this evening, right? And that's typically my goal, is always to have it there by this evening. If you want to get a kind of head start on it, the unedited version will appear in this place here called Panapto Recordings. And that's going to be important for the Thursday one because I won't have time on Thursday to edit any of my videos. So you're just going to have to click in that one and you just see, well, it won't necessarily be a perfect video because when I do a video, I'll make mistakes. And what I normally do is I just edit them out so you all think I'm perfect. But in that one, you'll see all the mistakes that I make. So I'll do 2 times 3 is 7 and all sorts of stuff. And I'll just go, oops, and you'll get to see it. But at least on Thursday, that's where you'll get it. All the other time, I would go to the corrected, edited version, right? Because it's less distracting if you don't see me humming and hawing while I think of what the next phrase is going to be. So far, so good. That's where our stuff is going to be. Now, there's the officer. If you have trouble with Zoom, trouble with WebAssign, and there's just some fun stuff because I think math is fun, so I put fun stuff there. And now the syllabus. Right, if you want to email me or do any kind of communication, use that email that you can see here. Maybe I can make this a little bigger. Yeah, that's better. drobertson@olympic.edu. Now, it's pretty obvious that's how you can communicate with me. You can also do it through Canvas, which indirectly just does the same thing. And I'll be able to reply to you relatively quickly and hopefully solve your problems. When you're in WebAssign, there's a button at the bottom or the side or someplace that says talk to your professor or ask your professor. Don't use that button because I don't get it sent to me. So you'll think you've went and hit a button saying, I need help with question 2. And 4 days will go by and I'll not have answered it. And it's not that I'm ignoring you. It's I never got the message, right? So you have to send, I need help with question 10 or whatever to the drobertson@olympic.edu. Right? As long as you communicate that way, I will definitely get it and I will reply. You should have done the prerequisites. You'll need equipment. There's the link if you want to get, I believe that's the up-to-date link at least. If it's not, there'll be a link in the college resources where you can get your free stuff, right? So if you want to borrow a mic or borrow a webcam or something. I believe they even do some computers, some laptops, but they go fast. So if you're in that situation, you might want to do it right away. There's the same information that we gave about joining WebAssign again. First class, last class. We have a midterm going to last 3 hours. That will be on WebAssign. When you do any of the midterm exams or the online tests or so on, everything, including your homework, all of it is on WebAssign. Now, when it's an exam, like a midterm or an online test, the minute you enter it, a clock starts ticking. So for instance, an online test, you have 2 hours to finish it. A midterm or the final, you've got 3 hours. So don't go anywhere near clicking on the midterm exams or the tests until you are, yep, I'm ready to take it, now go and do it. Now you can do it anytime, right? Up to, well, let's do it. If it's homework or online tests, which I'll show you down here. Here is the homework for week 1. And here is the online test for week 1. All of those have to be finished by midnight on Sunday. Because at midnight on Sunday, they close. And we'll talk more about WebAssign and what it looks like. But as you can see here, you've got 4 topics and an online test. Okay, so you've got, that's this week's work. And week 2's work is all of this. And it has to be due by midnight Sunday. Midnight Sunday, midnight Sunday. The only one that's not midnight Sunday is this guy, because all of these things have to be finished by Wednesday. And the final exam, well, it says 10 to 1, but actually the final exam can be done anytime, but I guess that was a placeholder by me. Are you comfortable about the schedule and what you have to do each week, right? Do not get behind, because if you don't wait Sunday midnight to think you're going to get all that done, right? Don't wait till 10 p.m. and think I can do it all, because you'll not be able to, right? There are just too many questions. You won't do well. You won't succeed. My best advice is, as soon as I've covered the topic, then you should pretty much, as soon as you can, go onto the homework and WebAssign and do it. It's fresh in your mind, right? You'll be able to figure out how to do it. And also, if you've got problems, you've enough time to contact me most of the time, right? And say, hey, I need help with this bit. I'm not doing it right. Can you help me? So that's my advice. Any questions so far? Seems pretty straightforward. If you've used online software, it's pretty easy to do. Now, let's talk about how we, this is what we're going to cover. Actually, that's not what we're going to cover, but I will make a change to that so it won't disturb you when the outcomes. This is what's important. Homework, 25% of your grade. 7 online tests, only 5 of them count. So I'll drop the 2 worst ones and the 5 best count. A midterm worth 20 and a final exam worth 30. So that's where the grading for this class will come from, right? 25% homework, 25% online test, 20% from a midterm, and another 30 for the final grade. And that's just more details about them. And then you get your grade, and this is how your grade turns into your GPAs. So you need 75% to pass this class. 75% is a 2.0. And that's what it looks like if you want to do it as a letter. And there's some resources that can help you. And the usual things about what you can and can't do. And I don't know what that's doing there, but it shouldn't be there. So it's another note to self. So back to home. We've done the syllabus. We've talked about what's on Canvas. So what I'm going to do now is let's get it loaded up. Wait a few seconds. There's some other classes I'm doing. There's ours. And let's show you what it looks like. Okay, that's what our class week 1 looks like. That's what you'll see when you finally join WebAssign. If you look over here, can you see it tells you they're all due Sunday midnight? That's the first piece of homework, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. We're going to cover this top one today, right? So that's my goal. Once that's done, you should be able to actually go straight in and do chapter 2, solving linear equations. It's not too difficult. It's actually an overlap of stuff you've done in Math 94. So right now, there are 4 current assignments. Once you've got to week 2 and 3, you'll see another box saying past assignments. So if you click on that, you can go back and look at stuff you've done in the past, right? Check it, look at it again. So I'll click on this, and here we go. And it says, what is the multiplication property of equations? And if you hit the ebook, you can read about it. But essentially, I have a name for this that isn't in the textbook. And the name I call this process of solving equations is, as long as you do it to both sides, it's okay, Rob. So do you know when you're solving an equation, you add 10 to both sides, or you take away 2 from both sides, or you multiply both sides by 5, or you divide both sides by 2. You remember solving equations by doing the same thing to both sides of an equation. You remember that process? Right. That's essentially what they've got there. So you would just write in a sentence, something like, if you multiply both sides of an equation, you could use it to help you simplify or solve an equation. And then we come to solving equations. And I'm going to solve this one because I can do it in my head, I hope. And I'll do 11. And if you hit submit answer, it will. Now, this answer is 8. And yeah, they are dead simple. They start off simple and then they get worse and worse, right? So don't be, oh, this is baby stuff, because I guess it is. It's just to get you warmed up, right? I don't want to chuck you in at the deep end and hit you with some really hard ones right off the bat. So a couple of warm-up ones. Now, the right answer to this should be x equals 8. Now, watch what happens when I do submit answer. It's wrong. You get 5 attempts at a question. So if the first one's wrong, you say, oh, God, yeah. Divide both sides by 2, you get 8, don't you? Right? 16, 8. Yeah, I knew that. Well, you just go here and you do 8. And then you submit answer. And it's like it never happened. So you can make 4 mistakes as long as the last one's right. And he doesn't care. Neither do I. Now, let's suppose that I had a problem with that question. I know we shouldn't, but let's pretend I did. You see, in this case, there is some help. And there are different kinds of help. Some are practice and other, where they give you another question that you can try out with as many guesses as you like until you figure it out, and it helps you with it. Some, you click, and it says watch it. And it gives you, notice a very similar looking equation. And you click on it. And the guy goes through it and, you know, he helps you, right? So it's a resource. And here's the question. It's very simple. Is 4 a solution to that equation? Well, the way you would do it, wouldn't you just say, well, is 3 times 4, take away 4, the same number as 2 times 4? And in this case, the answer is yes. Okay. And off you go and you do a lot of questions. Now, can you see how ugly they're going to get towards the end? So the baby ones are finished and now we're on to the good stuff. And there's even a couple of puzzle questions after that. So let me now move on to what I call my whiteboard. And we'll talk about how do you solve equations. And we're going to use that method that I call, as long as you do it to both sides, it's okay rule. So let me do an example. Let's suppose I had 9x plus 8 was 26. Now, when you solve an equation, essentially what you're trying to do is find a, hopefully, unique value of x, right? What number x must be so that 9 times that number plus 8 comes to 26. And when the questions are very easy, you could almost do it without algebra. Couldn't you just say, oh, I can do that in my head. But for the algebra process, what you do is you subtract 8 from both sides. And then you divide both sides by 9. And your answer would be x equals 9. But all you would do in WebAssign is all you would do is type in the 9. So you see that in WebAssign, you don't type in all your working, you only type in what the final result is, right? So you will have working to do, we just won't see it, right? Now, let's move up the food chain. I want to solve an equation that has x's on both sides. What should I do to both sides to get this closer to being solved? What should I do to both sides? Any suggestions?
Move one of the x's over, and then one of the like 2, you could subtract 2 from both sides.
Yeah. So you don't need this line. I'm just taking it really slowly. So the first thing you said, subtract 2 from both sides. And the other one you said was move the x's over. I know what you mean. I would just phrase it as take 2x away from both sides. Right, so that's where we are. And very often when you are solving equations, isn't the last line probably going to look something like this, where you divide both sides by, in this case, which creates 2 again. Right. So if you divide both sides by 2, you get the answer, -6. And all you would write down in Weber sign would be the -6. Now, the next question is going to look ugly, because it is, but it's actually not that difficult to do, because the calculator is going to help us out a lot. And that is an equation with fractions in it. Anytime you see fractions, isn't life just a lot harder, right? They're not easy to deal with. But we're going to let this calculator, in my case, I'm going to do the TI-84, which is the one I prefer. I suggest strongly that you get a TI-84, either a physical one. There are apps online that are calculators like the TI-84. In fact, I think there's a TI-84 emulator calculator out there that you can do online on your phone or whatever. Use that. Now, regardless of how ugly the numbers are, the process is going to remain the same. I am going to subtract 4/9 from both sides. And then I'm going to let the calculator do the heavy lifting. So I'm going to take 11/27 and subtract 4/9, and I'm going to get an answer that has to be a fraction, because if the original was a fraction, we'd expect a fraction as a result. And I do this, 11/27 subtract 4/9. Do you know, it looks like I'm doing a calculation, right? Now, when I hit enter, a decimal is going to reappear. Don't worry, that's okay. Then you go and you hit the math button, and you see option 1, fract, short for fraction. What that does is it turns your answer into a fraction. So when I press enter, it's going to take answer into a fraction. And there is your answer, -1/27. Isn't it nice that the TI-84 handles fractions? Now, some of you might have your own calculator that can deal with fractions, and that's great. I'm just using that one because it's the one I've got, right? But life's so much simpler when you let the calculator take the strain, isn't it? Now, next phase. Well, let's do a calculation with fractions. And while we're at it, let's change the variable to a y. Now, I want to find y. And when you have so many y equals a number, the next step is you divide both sides by 3/4. Are we good? Divide both sides by 3/4. Right. Now, if that was 7/11, I'd divide by 7/11. If that was 2, wouldn't I just divide by 2? Right. Dividing both sides. Now, I should be able to make the calculator do that. And I'm going to put a bracket around it, and I'm going to go 2/5, close the bracket, divided by another bracket, 3/4. Now, I might not need those brackets, but I tend to worry sometimes when you do a calculator, because there's a thing called order of calculation. which means that the calculator might do it in a different order than I want it to. If I put brackets around it, haven't I forced it to take 2/5 and divide it by 3/4? So when I hit this and get the decimal, I should then go math, turn me into a fraction, and the answer is 8/15. Now I'm going to do that same calculation without the brackets just to see if it mattered, because sometimes it doesn't. There's 2/5 divided by, there is 3/4. Would you agree it already? Oops, try that again. 2/5 divided by 3/4. Right, would you agree it already looks weird? The calculator's going to have a big problem trying to figure out who's getting divided by who, right? So I'll hit that answer, and then I'll do math, convert. And would you agree that it's not the same answer? So do you see in that case, the brackets were really important? I'm not going to do it, but see if I did this question here without brackets, or I did it with brackets, you get the same answer. So it doesn't matter for add or subtract. It does matter for divide. I'm not 100% sure if it matters for multiply, but I always play safe. Isn't it just better to put a bracket around it anyway? You'll never cause damage by having a bracket that you don't need. You could cause damage, right, by not having one when you do need it. So my advice is, if you're not sure, do I need a bracket for this messy calculation? Put one in, right? Just play safe. Put one in. How are we doing so far, guys? Are we coming back? Right, they're just getting uglier, and they're going to get even uglier. Let's do, well, maybe not uglier. Let's do a decimal. Okay, still an equation. Still have to do things to both sides. What shall I do to both sides? Any order you like. Tell me what I should do.
You could subtract b.
Okay, now that I can do in my head. And those of you who are, more comfortable, you could probably do both things at once, right? But I've kind of just did one thing, right? Now, what should I do to both sides? Now,
Subtract 1.234.
right, so I'll go to my calculator and I'll put in this guy, so it's a negative 1.75. And then I'm going to subtract from both sides 1.234. And the answer I get is negative 2.984. We good? And to finish then, what should I do to both sides?
Divide them by 2.
And since I've got that guy in the calculator, can I just do divide by 2 and get the answer negative 1.492? Now, if the question was decimals, isn't it totally okay to have an answer that's a decimal? When the question was a fraction, we expect a fraction. When the question has decimals, we expect decimals, right? Things going good? Don't see too many worried faces. Right. Just keep moving through the food chain. Try and make things ugly. How about this one? There's at least 2 different ways, maybe 3, I can't think of a third one, but there's at least 2 different ways to solve this one. Anybody want to tell me what to do to both sides? Because that's the method that we're going to use here.
Subtract 1.
Okay, I can handle that. What should I do to both sides now?
Divide negative 7.
And I don't really need to do that in a calculator. Would you agree I could just do that? And that's the answer. Okay, it's nicer if it says x equals negative 13/7, but isn't negative 13/7 equals x the same information? Right. Now, if you're wondering what the other method was, the other method is not as pretty as this one. Couldn't I add 7x to both sides, then take away 14 from both sides, and then divide and get to the same result? Right, that would have worked. But I think this is less work. I like less work. How about this fella? First time we've had those guys. I call these guys brackets. You lot, because you don't know any better, because you're all Americans, call them parentheses, don't you? I like the word bracket because I can use the word bracket in different ways. These are called curved brackets. These are called square brackets. And these are called curly brackets. You see, I can now tell you 3 different kinds of parentheses without having funny names for them. Curved bracket, square bracket, curly bracket. Isn't that just easier? So that's my goal, to get Americans to call the thing brackets instead of parentheses. Secondly, isn't parenthesis a hard word to say fast? And brackets just easier. Yeah. Now, we are not going to yet, although we will do it later, do the same thing to both sides. First problem is this guy here, right? That's the first question we've ever had some brackets, right? What do we do about this?
You distribute.
You distribute. So 3 times x gets you 3x, and 3 times that guy gets you negative 24 equals 16. Now, I still am not going to add or subtract to both sides yet. Would you agree that I really should take care of the 2x and the 3x, shouldn't I? And essentially collect like terms. That's what we call that. So if you collect like terms, you've now got that. And now we're ready to do the same thing to both sides. You see, it's ready. Would you agree that trying to do something to both sides at this line here would have been the wrong, that would have been the wrong idea, right? It wouldn't work. Now it's going to work. So I'm going to add 24 to both sides. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 5. And sometimes it's easy, so you just write the answer down. We go with that process. That's what you do when you see brackets. So let's do some more brackets. I have this guy. And I have that guy. Would it seem reasonable that I should distribute first before I try anything else here? Would that be a good strategy? So I'm going to distribute by multiplying those 2 guys by 2 and distribute by multiplying those 2 guys by 2. And I think we've now reached a place where as long as you do it to both sides, it's okay rule. And in this case, how about adding 4a to both sides and adding 4 to both sides? You see, I did that in one go. Added 4a to both sides, added 4 to both sides. And then at this point, we could divide. And if you put that into a calculator and you hit the fraction button, wouldn't you get 5/3? So isn't it nice that the calculator will even simplify fractions for you? Because 10/6 isn't the same answer as 5/3. And in WebAssign, if you put 10/6, it will probably tell you you're wrong. Right? It wants 5/3. So if you just do it in your calculator, I'll show you. 10/6 sixth. Math button, choice number 1. Turn me into a fraction. See how easy it is? Now, something like that you could see, right? But you know, there are going to be some weird fractions out there that you might not even think of as simplifiable, right? How about 57 sixths, right? You might think, that's an ugly fraction. I can't do anything with that. Doesn't it simplify down to, in this case, 19 halves? So it might be worth doing every one of these on a calculator just to see if the fraction, if it is a fraction, right, simplifies or not. If the answer's 4, you don't need to worry about it, right? It's 4. You can't do much with that. Okay, let's move up the food chain to scary stuff or challenging stuff, or maybe just fun stuff. I don't know. Depends on you. I like them, so I would call them fun stuff. Would you agree, compared to 2x equals 8, which was kind of the first question we did, that this one is a lot more going on, right? A lot more things to deal with. And a lot of the way of tackling these is to realize what's the right order, right? What do I do first? What do I do second? You know, and so on. What do you think would be the first thing to do in this question?
Distribute.
Agreed. 4 times x gets you 4x. 4 times that guy is negative 16. Add 4. That guy is just 4x, right? That's who he is and who he's always going to be. If you cover that up, it kind of helps, at least it helps my brain. Negative 2 times that gets you negative 8. And negative 2 times negative 8 gets you plus 2x. Are we all happy with that line? Distribute. Okay, we ain't finished. We've got a lot to do, but we got to do it in the right order, right? We got to do certain things first before you do other things later. So what do we do first now?
Add negative 16 and 4 and 4x and 2x.
Looks good to me. The jargon for that is collecting like terms, but what you said makes perfect sense. Would you agree we've kind of got to the point that it's pretty straightforward now, right? Can't we now do the as long as you do it to both sides, it's okay rule? Anybody got a preference about which to do first or which to do second or do both together, right? I can go 2 ways with this. Let's do it kind of the boring way. I'm going to add 12 to both sides. That makes this disappear, right? And that turns into 4. I'm then going to subtract 6x from both sides. Are you comfortable with those 2 steps done at once? Right? Add 12 to both sides, take away 6x from both sides. And then you divide both sides by negative 2. There's your answer. So far, so good. Moving on. The next question. A lot of these questions, by the way, are very similar to the homework questions. If you've never done WebAssign before, they change the numbers and the fractions. So question 7 that Joe's got won't look exactly like the question 7 that Addison gets. So if Addison contacts Joe and says, I'm having trouble with question 7, he won't be able to tell you his answer. Well, he could, but it won't be your answer, right? So he would have to help you. This is what you do, which I think is good. Now, in this question here, what we're really dealing with is ugly fractions here, there, and everywhere. Agreed? Now, don't let the fact that it's a fraction be a problem. Just do what you would have done if it had been 2t take away 5 equals, I don't know, 12t, right? Just imagine there were normal whole numbers, nothing scary about them. And we'll let the calculator figure it out for us, right? So what do you want to do to both sides here?
Subtract 290.
I would agree. Would you agree that by doing, and I'm going to write this down, that by doing it in this order, don't you, it reduces how many things you need to do. Agreed? Because now, won't they become some weird fraction and it'll be equal to this? But I don't care that it's a weird fraction because I have a workaround. A bracket. Well, I actually don't need them when it's subtraction, so I won't bother. So I'm going to do 1/12 take away 2/9. I don't care about the t's. Math 1 inner. It's now -5/6 equals -5/36 t. Do you see the calculator took care of the 1/12 take away 2/9 guy? Now, again, I know it's ugly fractions, but think of it as -5 equals -50t, right? If it was nice numbers, what would I do to both sides? What would I do to both sides to get t?
Divide by -556.
Okay, so we take this guy and we divide it by that guy. And so, because it's a division, I'll remember from last time to put brackets around it. So -5/6 divided by -5/36, and I press enter. And wow, were you expecting such a nice answer after all that work? It's just 6. But if it hadn't been 6, wouldn't I hit the fraction button and I would have turned it into 17,940 as whatever, right? Fractions are really not an issue when the calculator can do it for you. Would you agree? You can pick the ugliest looking fractions in the world as long as you give me a calculator that has a fraction feature. I don't care. I can do it. Now, there is a second method that you could use, and I'm only going to show you it once because I don't think it brings too much to the, to the party. You could just multiply everybody by a big number that made all the fractions go away. And the number I'm going to choose is 36. Now, if you multiply that by 36, it goes away, that by 36, it goes away, and that goes away. Now, you just trust me, I would do it in a calculator, but if you multiply this guy by 36, you get 8t. If you multiply this guy by 36, you get 30. And if you multiply this guy by 36, you get 3t. Do you see that the question now becomes a very nice looking equation? And then you can solve it. Now, some people prefer that rather than, there's just too many fractions going on here and they just want them to go. For this method to work, don't you have to know what's a good version, right? What's a good number? And so you have to pick a number that divides by 9, 6, and 12, right? You have to choose a number. Any one will work, but it has to be divided by these. Now, in this question here, if you take 3t away from both sides and add 30 to both sides, and then you divide both sides by 5, can you see where you get the same solution? So you might actually say, nah, I like that better than this. And I'm okay with that, right? You'll have to figure out, do you want to just find a number that makes all the fractions go away? Or do you want to just let the calculator deal with the ugly answer and live with that? It's a preference thing. Are we good? Still good? Right? We're almost, well, we're 10 minutes away, but we're almost finished. So here goes. This one is question 21. I'm just putting this one in, or at least a version of 21, so you can say, I wonder where that question came from. Oops, there's a +7 here, and it's equal to 2a. Now, my A's look like 9s. I don't know what to do about that, but they just look like 9s, right? So are you used to my curly A's, and my 9s look much different, right? Now, this guy here, plus 7 equals 2a. We want to solve this. There are 2 ways to do this. Let's do the multiply by something trick. There's only one fraction here, isn't it? 5, right? Nothing else is a fraction. So that's the choice made for me. Now, if you multiply this by 5, all you get is 2a take away 9. If you multiply this by 5, you get 35. And if you multiply this guy by 5, you get 10a. So do you see that all the fractions go away when you use this process? 5 times this ugly fraction, 5 times this number, 5 times this. Now, if you collect like terms, essentially these guys, I believe 26. Okay, do you want to tell me what I should do to both sides now? Because the question's pretty much in its standard form.
Subtract 2a.
I would. Just less work. And then couldn't you divide both sides by 8? Now, is that answer simplified? Right? Can I do that in a simpler version? Not sure. Let's find out then. 26 divided by 8. Math button, turn me into fraction. And the answer is 13 quarters. The answer is not 3 1/4. I know 13 quarters is 3 1/4. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that this is not considered the version or the way you should write a fraction answer. Fraction answers should always be written as, in America, you call these, I believe, improper fractions. You recognize that name? Improper fraction. I don't like that name. I much prefer the name that we have for them in Scotland. This is not a made-up name. I make up names for everything, but not this one. In Scotland, I believe in England as well, we call them top-heavy fractions. Now, isn't that just a better name? Doesn't it just look like top-heavy? Doesn't improper fraction sound like there's something wrong with it? And what does an improper fraction even look like, right? If I say it's a top-heavy fraction, doesn't the name give you an idea of what it looks like? Right, it's top-heavy. It's big on the top, top-heavy. So I'd use the word top-heavy all the time. So when you hear that phrase, well, you now know what I'm talking about. Oh, this is top-heavy, right? This fraction, 7 quarters, is top-heavy. You'll know what I'm on about. Well, almost finished. 2 questions to try, and we'll be done for today. This one is got decimals in it. In a lot of ways, decimals are easier to do than fractions. Right. What should I do first?
Distribute.
Okay. Now, negative 4.2 times p is that guy, and that guy times that guy. I should really do that in my calculator. So negative 4.2 times 3.4, I get the answer negative 14.28, and that's going to equal 11.13. So far, so good. Okay, what do we do next?
Add 14.28.
That's what I hear. So I'm going to go 11.13. I'm going to add 14.28, and the answer I get is 25.41. And one last step. What do I do to both sides to find P?
Divide by negative 4.2.
So we have a 25.41 divided by a negative 4.2, and the answer we get is negative 6.05. And you don't need to worry about simplifying decimals, right? You know, the calculator, the decimal is a decimal, right? There's nothing you can do to change it. So we only have one last question, which is 25. Now let's see. I'll show you the question. And then we'll see about solving it. So it's a little application, right? A little puzzle question. The admission charge for a family at a city zoo is $6.50 for the first person, and then $4.75 for each additional family member. So you get like a discount if there's more of you, right? How many people are in a family that is charged $30.25 for admission, right? So it's a kind of puzzle question. And so I'm just writing down the key numbers here. The first person, $6.50. Putting the rest down, $4.75. And I know that the total came to $30.25. So this is how my brain works. You might be able to tackle this slightly different way, but essentially it's mathematically it's going to be similar. Right. What do I know? Well, let's figure out how to calculate the total. Won't the total be $6.50, right? Plus $4.75 times X. And X is going to be the rest of the family, right? So if there's two more in the family, right, X will be 2, right? Husband, wife, and one kid, right? That kind of story. So X represents the rest. Now, I know that the total comes to $30.25, and that is 6.50 plus 4.75x. And you see, I've now created an equation. And when I solve that equation, won't I be able to tell you who X is? That's the rest of the people, right? Usual question, what do I do next?
Subtract 6.50.
Okay, so I'm going to go here and do 30.25, take away $6.50, and this is going to be $23.75. And then we have that line. So what do I do now?
Divide 475.
And shouldn't I get a whole number here? Right? So as long as I get 3, 4, 5, 2, I'm happy. If I got 7.1, wouldn't that be a good indication I've screwed up somewhere and I should go and maybe look at my formula because something's not right, right? So sometimes the context of the question will give you a clue that you're not doing things correctly. And this answer is, whoops, X is 5. And then I am going to make a mistake, a deliberate one. And the question went and asked, how many people were in the family? And I would say, oh, it's 5. But that's not the answer to their question. How many people are in this family? It's not actually 5.
It's 6.
It's 6. Why is it 6? You're right.
Because 650 was the initial cost for one person, and then 475 for each additional person.
So when I got X, X was just the rest of them. don't we want everyone? And shouldn't everyone be X plus, you know, the first guy? Now, you see how you could easily be caught out? You did all the math right, and you got X as 5, and then you plugged in 5, and the darn thing says you're wrong. And then you go and you look at it, and you'll start second guessing yourself, you know, and trying to do other things, right? Or you might guess, I guess, but not a good idea. So read carefully what the question is asking. The solution might be X equals 5, but they were asking for the total number of people, right? I guess if they said, how many extra, not including the first person, was there? I guess if it phrased it that way, wouldn't the answer be 5 again? Right? But they didn't ask that. They said, how many people in total? And we are finished. And thank you for turning up. Hopefully it was worthwhile and I haven't wasted your time. This video will be due about 7 p.m. today, was my best guess. And that's it.